Aloha everyone and welcome to Ukulele Underground University Uke 102 week number 3. Today we're going to be going over major and minor scales. So here we are, week number 3, and we're going to be diving into some music theory. But trust me, I'm gonna try to make it as as user friendly as possible. So I know a lot of you folks are a little bit intimidated with music theory. So I'm gonna try to explain major and minor scales to you folks as friendly as possible. All right, so let's get right down to business. So first off, let's take a look at what we did last week and what our goals were. So did you meet your week 2 goals? So first off, our first goal for week number 2 is understand what makes an arpeggio and how to go outside that box to extend it. So last week we talked about arpeggios and extended arpeggios. So we got things like So we got some nice melody lines instead of doing our normal into outs kind of arpeggios. We learned extensions to make those sound a little bit more melodic and a little bit better. Alright, so we stepped outside the box of what we usually do with arpeggios. We added more things. So last week's goal was to understand what makes an arpeggio and how to do the extended arpeggios. So did you guys check that out? Did you did you try it with your own chords that you usually play? And of course, be able to play the exercises provided. So we provided you folks with some exercises and some examples of some extended arpeggios. So did you guys manage to get through those? Because those were our goals for last week. And I wanted to let you guys know that when applying your extended arpeggios to chords that you already play, just make sure to experiment and keep things in beat, and try to go outside the box to try to figure out what works for you and what sounds good to you and what and what doesn't. Because some notes will work, some notes work better than others, and it's all about experimentation to figure out which notes will sound good. Okay, now. These are our goals for this week. So first off is we want to be able to understand the formula for major and minor scales. Next, we want to have a basic idea of what notes can be played in what key, and also play all the exercises without making any mistakes. So first off, we want to be able to understand the major and minor scales. So it's not just about knowing what it is, not just about being able to say do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, because that's basically me knowing what the major scale is. But to be able to understand the formula to create that major scale and what it's being used for. So it's good to have a basic idea of what notes can be played in what key. So basically, major scales will let you know what notes will sound good. When you're playing a certain group of chords, so for example, if I'm playing C, F, and G, I will know that, in that key of C, with those chords in there, I will know what notes will sound good versus what notes will sound not good. Or, I'll know which notes will be sour notes and which notes will be good notes. All right? And we're going to up the ante a little bit. So we want to be able to play all the exercises without any mistakes. So this is week number 3. So what we want to do is we want to be able to add accuracy in there. Okay, so not just be able to play the tune or be able to play it in rhythm. So it's not just about this dexterity. We also want to do accuracy. Okay, we want to be able to play the right notes because what we're going to be stressing out in this lesson is to be able to play those those notes. And if you don't play those notes accurately, you're gonna run into sour notes. All right, we want to be able to play good notes. So in order to do that, we want to enforce to play the exercises without making any mistakes. All right, so any questions so far? These are our goals.
So wait, so that of course they're gonna make mistakes though.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So
But we want to be able to to do it without any mistakes. So we're working on accuracy. So when you're practicing, it's okay to make those mistakes. But what we want to do is we want to build towards playing the exercises without making any mistakes. But it is it is okay if you make mistakes every now and then. That's what practice is all about, right? So don't worry about that. But we want to be able to work towards this goal. So that's why they're week goals, and our goal is to not make any mistakes, because we all know that even though I've been playing for 20 years, that is still my goal. That goal is still is still with me every time I step up on stage. I want to be able to play it without making any mistakes. I will make mistakes, but my goal is to not do them. So we're human.
Are you gonna warm up?
Yeah. So before we we just want to see if anybody has any questions about the goals so far. All right. So just like what Kahai said, before we get to what scales are and whatnot, we want to be able to warm up our fingers. So let's rewind it back. Like I said, if I can only do one exercise, I will be doing this. So we're going to be doing this from every start of our lesson. So let's take our fingers, loosen up your fingers, loosen up your wrists, and we're just gonna shake. So we're gonna do 4 counts, so 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna rest for 4. We're gonna do 4 more, rest again, and then another 4. So we're gonna be doing 3 sets of 4 counts with 4 beat rests in between. Okay, here we go. Ready, set, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and rest. 2, 3, 4, and 2, 2, 3, 4, and rest. 2, 3, 4, and last one. 2, 3, 4, and rest. 2, 3, 4. All right. So let's take a look at week number 2, and let's do our warm-up exercises from week number 2. So week number 2, we have second exercise, which sounds like this. Okay, so we're gonna be playing it in this tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum ba da dum bum 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 bum. Ba da dum bum 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 bum. So you're gonna take your pinky finger. You're gonna play A string 4th fret, and just kind of pull off. And you're gonna go up the strings to the C string, hammer on the 2nd fret, and go down the strings again. Ready? Play it with me here. 1, 2, 3, 4, C. C string. Alright, now that we're all nice and warmed up, let's take a look at what are scales. So first off, I know you're probably asking, oh man, like, why do I need to learn scales? Like, why would I want to learn scales? I don't want to be bothered with music theory. Well, it's very, very, very important to learn scales. And I remember when I was first starting out how to play the ukulele, when I first started learning, I didn't have, private instructions or instructional videos or the help of YouTube or anything like that. I had to figure everything out on my own. So what I'm going to be doing, explaining the scales, is I'm going to explain it to you folks, kind of like how I learned, growing up and playing the ukulele and figuring things out on my own. Okay, so I'm not going to try to explain it to you folks like a music teacher. But I'm going to be explaining to you guys just like how I would approach it when I was first starting off. So when I was first starting off, I would kind of play along with the with the radio, with some of my favorite albums like I'll Create a Boys and Pure Heart and whatnot, and I would learn things by ear. So I noticed that when I played, there's certain chords that sound good together, and whenever those chords seem to pop up, I would be playing pretty much the same sequence of notes, okay? So for example, I have a song like, we had the song Tropical Hawaiian Day. And then, we would have another example, the same album would have Stand By Me and, by the I'll Create a Boys, and they would have... and they're pretty much repeating notes. So I would notice that this note will be the same, that note will be the same, those two notes will be the same. So as you know, as a band student, I approached my my band teacher, Mr. McIntosh, and I'm like, why is it kind of like this? And he explained to me, those scales that we've been doing in band class pretty much every day to warm up. That's exactly what they are. Those notes will sound good with those chords. So it's very important to learn scales if you want to learn how to play the right notes, because some of those notes might not sound as good. So if I'm playing C, F, and G, I have my do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, my major scale, and those notes would sound good with those chords. And if I play anything in between that, or if I played anything that wasn't on there, it's not gonna sound as good. So for example, my friend Aaron Nakamura over here is going to be playing for you folks C, F, and G. So he's gonna be doing the simple down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, F, and G, back to C. So and as soon as I step outside of that box, it's not gonna sound good anymore. So that sequence sounded pretty good. I'm gonna step right outside the box here. So that note alone, if I went in that note, it's going to sound sour and it's not going to sound good. So why should you learn scales? It's so that you avoid playing notes like that, when you eventually get really good at the ukulele, and of course you're going to tell people that Aldrin Guerrero taught you when you go on your first international tour, and be like, I learned everything from Aldrin Guerrero. So make sure to give me that credit, yeah, when you're playing at the Grammys. All right, so when you play up on stage, you want to be able to play for your audience, and you want to play good notes for your audience. You don't want to be playing notes like, you want to be playing that note for your audience. It's gonna sound sour. So the only way for you to to have full knowledge, to be fully confident into what the right notes are versus the wrong notes, you're gonna have to learn some scales. Okay? So scales are the building blocks of music. In Western music, we have 12 different notes. So here are the 12 different notes. And I noticed that on my ukulele, right on the 12th fret, we have the two dots. And what those two dots mean, if you have fret markers on your ukulele, some of you fancy people might not, because you have fancy little inlays on your uke, but for a traditional ukulele, you usually have the two dots right on the 12th fret. And what that means is that the notes will then just repeat, because here are my notes for my A string, for example. A. If I play the first fret, it'll be A sharp, B flat, and then B, then C, then C sharp, D flat, then D, then D sharp, E flat, then E, then F, then F sharp, G flat, then G, G sharp, A flat, and that will bring me back to A. So I have 12 unique notes. A, B flat, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D flat, D, D sharp, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G flat, G, G sharp, A flats, and then goes back to A. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 before it repeats itself again. So and so on and so forth, okay? So that is what we have in Western music. And I say Western music because there are some, there's some music that have the notes right in between those, but we're not gonna be thinking about that right now. And I'm gonna show you a visual. So here is the visual. We have these 12 very awesome notes. It's going to be A sharp, B flats, B, C, C sharp, D flat, D, D sharp, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G flat, G, and G sharp, A flat. So you can kind of get a visual of to what it looks like when written out this way. So imagine those as the 12 frets on your A string. So that's very important as well. Okay. So what I want you guys to see is that, sometimes you probably, some of you might be asking, what is A sharp B flat? Or what is C sharp D flat? Or what is D sharp E flat? Or F sharp G flat? Or G sharp A flat? Why are there two notes in that one space? But see, the thing is, those two notes are exactly the same note. Okay? So A to B is going to be 2 frets of a difference, and in between that you're gonna have either an A sharp or a B flat. Okay, so that's just right in the middle of those two notes. So you can either call it an A sharp or a B flat, and it will both be correct. So B flat, A sharp. So you can think of it this way: A sharp will raise the note by a half step. A flat will lower the notes by a half step. So if each one of these are a half step apart from A, we'll have a half step up to the A sharp B flats, which is basically B half step down to B flat. So A to A sharp is the same thing as B to B flat. All right. Now, you might notice that there are no notes between B and C and E and F. So you don't have to worry about B sharp or C flat or E sharp or F flat for now, because there are no notes in between E and F and B and C. So this is a nice little visual of all the notes in Western music. All right. So we have whole step and half step. Don't worry about that for now. I'm going to show you what that means a little bit later on. So scales will tell us which notes will sound good with certain combination of chords and which notes don't sound as good. So just like I said, there's going to be, notes that will sound good with those sequences, and some that will not sound as good. Just like the example that we gave you earlier, me and Aaron played that note right there, that A string first fret, does not belong in that scale, therefore it doesn't sound good. So learning your scales are as important as wanting to play the right notes. So if you want to play the right notes for your audience, it doesn't matter if you're playing in a stadium or playing in front of your family or playing in front of your cat, like I do sometimes. You want to be playing the right notes, because people will tell. I mean, have you ever heard somebody perform and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that note didn't sound as good as the rest of the notes? That's probably because they played a note that was not in the scale. All right. So, any questions so far?
Devin.
Yeah.
Asked, aren't the scales the heart of soloing? Sorry.
Yeah, they are basically the heart of soloing. And just like I said, it will tell us which notes will sound good. So when you're doing your soloing or when you're playing any kind of melody line, you want those notes to sound good, right? So knowing the scales will let you decide which notes sound good and which notes will not sound good, or which notes sound bad. So when you're soloing, you want to be soloing good notes.
I think it's like a shortcut instead of because you could pick up your ukulele and you could try bumbling around and trying to figure out does
which
this
notes sound
good?
good?
Does this? But instead, if oh, it's in the key of C, then immediately know oh, I know all these notes sound good, and that's the ones I'm gonna aim for. It's it's like putting targets on notes, right?
Right,
you can
right.
just go straight to them. So.
Yeah, so another example is let's rewind the clock back a little bit to to the first week where we did that exercise of now these notes sound good because they're in the same scale. So if I were to play anything that's not in the scale, so for example this third fret, so if I were to play, you'll immediately hear the difference when I play that third fret. That did not belong there, okay? Or maybe the first fret here. So even if I don't play it in order, as long as I'm playing those notes, it still sounds good. Now if I'm playing notes outside of that, you can tell which notes were supposed to be in the scale and which were not in the scale. All right? So that's why very, very, very important to learn your major scales and minor scales.
The another thing too, like I wanted to or bring up kind of is like the reason why there's sharps and flats, like because
Yeah.
I think some people are gonna be like, what's the point of like why don't they just make flats, right? Or
Yeah,
like if they're
yeah.
the same notes,
Yeah.
why don't they just make one notation for it?
Uh-huh.
But like as you go farther into music theory, it's more important, right?
Yeah, it's
The-
more important because some notes are going to be G sharp rather than A flat, and there will be reasons for that. Yeah.
There's a distinction, even though like musically, like or audio wise, there's not a distinction between the two.
Yeah.
Like with notation later on, it kind of it gives you more details and it helps you understand the music a little bit better, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just it's kind of it's not something that's important now, but if you go further in music theory, it gets more important
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah. So, like I said, I want to be able to explain this to you folks as simple as I can, without getting too over people's heads with too much music theory. So for now, just understand that there are 12 different notes, and the scales will tell you which one of those notes will sound good, and which ones will sound bad. And the importance of learning your scale is that you want to be able to play the right notes versus the wrong notes. All right. So very, very, very important to keep in mind. Next, I want to give you guys an analogy. It's like a ham and cheese sandwich, all right? So if you're making a ham and cheese sandwich, you would need ham, cheese, and bread. If you have tomato, avocado, and cheese, you would not have a ham and cheese sandwich. You would have a tomato, avocado, and cheese sandwich. So this analogy means that if I were playing in a C, in the key of C, I will need C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. If I played B flat, that would not be in there. It's kind of like having a ham and cheese sandwich and adding anchovies. I might not want anchovies in there. That note's not gonna sound good. Just like how anchovies might not sound too good with with a ham and cheese sandwich. All right. And also, if you wanna take a look at it, we're gonna show you two different kinds of scales. We're gonna show you a major scale and a minor scale. Now, your major and minor scales are basically your most basic sandwich. Think of it as your ham and cheese sandwich and your egg salad sandwich, basically. Two very, very, very vanilla sandwiches. And later on, you can add things in those sandwiches to make them more fancy. So, it's not just about that. It's also playing outside. And that's what some people call jazz, all right? So if you want to learn that, we're going to show you that later on in perhaps Uke 103. Okay? So, anybody have any questions on this analogy?
Yeah, Devin said he said a spam and cheese sandwich.
Spam and cheese sandwich.
Well, but that's the thing. There is if we're using scales as a sandwich, there are weird scales.
Different types.
Yeah,
of
there are
scales.
different types of scales, exactly. Just like how we have different ethnic foods, for example. There's going to be some ethnic scales, There are some scales that, might sound Middle Eastern, for example. And of course, it's going to sound a little bit different. And you might have scales from from maybe like an Asian scale that has those half tones in there, and it's gonna sound a little bit different. I'm not gonna be able to do those with my ukulele. Well, I mean, obviously, but there are going to be different flavors, just like how there are different sandwiches out there in the world. So if we want to be, eating a ham and cheese sandwich, these are the ingredients that we're going to be needing. So I'm going to show you how you're going to get those ingredients and how you're going to be able to tell which ingredients will sound good with will taste good with your sandwich and which ones will not taste good. Because basically you're creating a sandwich for your audience, and you don't want to be giving them a ham and cheese sandwich with, I don't know, like I said, anchovies. I always go to anchovies, and anchovies get a bad rap, but I actually really like anchovies.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if they're expecting one thing,
Yeah.
and then you give them something totally off, then it's not
Yeah.
gonna go over well.
It's not gonna go
Yeah.
over well. Yeah, exactly.
And there's people will play stuff like that kind of, but then you can kind of, if you're just listening to them, you can kind of tell like, that wasn't exactly right, right? Or like that didn't fit the song exactly. So it's just like something you can, if you want to make sure like the song is very smooth and there's no hiccups, then it's like learn your scales and try and stick within the scales.
Yeah, because some people might get fancy with the scales. So for example, you might want to add a little bit of fancy mayo or ketchup in there. So there's times in in music, in this analogy, that you can do that as well. But for now, we want to focus on our very basic ham and cheese or egg salad sandwich. All right. So any questions on that so far?
So yeah, Leanne said I want to understand more about the different scales.
Yeah.
And it's like people talking about the like more advanced skills.
Uh-huh.
But the idea is that you learn these basic skills and you build from there.
And you
right?
build, yeah, exactly. But that's why we went with the analogy of ham and cheese sandwich, because just like sandwiches, everyone's got different flavors, and you can always add different things in there. And you, as a musician, will be the chef of that sandwich, and you can add your own flavors and create new sandwiches. All right. So just like that, but we want to be able to show you how to create a basic ham and cheese sandwich. If I'm going to teach you how to make that, I'm not going to show you like all these other things you can do already. I want to be able to teach you just the basic ham and cheese for now. Okay?
It's like you're not going to teach somebody how to use like the grill.
Yeah,
the grill,
exactly.
Like a little kid, right? It's like, no, you're going to burn yourself. So let's stick with let's just putting the sandwich together.
Yeah, let's just put a basic sandwich together. All right, so next up, here are the 12 notes that I was talking about. But because, I wanted you guys to get a better visual, and I wanted to kind of write down to show you folks the scale steps. I wrote it down in the whiteboard that I showed you earlier, but basically here are all the 12 notes. So A sharp, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D flat, D sharp, E flat, E, F sharp, G flat, G sharp, A flat, then back to A. All right, so as long as you know that this musical alphabet only goes up to G sharp, then you should be all good. All right, next up. So let's get down to business. So first off, the formula, let's take a look at major scales first. So major scales, your formula for the major scales, let me put my ukulele down for a second. Let me show you folks my little handy dandy diagram here, and that's where these two kind of come in. All right, so we got formula WWH, WWWH. I'm used to having a lot of W's. I like to watch wrestling a lot, so WWE, WWF, WCW. I'm used to a lot of W's. WWH, WWWH. What does that mean? Right here, whole and half. Remember when I explained to you folks that each one of the frets of your ukulele is going to be a half step. So a half step up, for example, from A string 3rd fret, half step up will be the 4th fret. From this note, half step down will be the 2nd fret. So that means a whole step, 2 halves make 1 whole, will be from here to there. So this is a half step up, and this is a whole step up. So that's the difference. Half step and whole step. Half step, whole step. So our formula, whole, half, whole, half. That's what the W's are, and that's what the H's are. Whole, half, whole, half. Say it with me. Whole, half, whole, half. One more time. Whole, half, whole, half. All right? So, here are the notes. Let's try to figure one out here. So, here I wrote down the C scale, and I got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. You might have heard that the C scale has no sharps and flats. This is going to prove that. So, if we plug in the formula for our major scale, I'm going to use this as a whole step, because what it's going to do is it's going to go from here, it's going to skip 1, and then lead us to the next note. So from C to D, that's a whole step. So another whole step, so whole, half, right? Whole, then another whole, and then half. Just like this right here. And then another whole. It's getting a bit too far for me there. So another whole, and another whole, which then leads me back to my A. Remember, it repeats just like how we covered it before. It just repeats all the way from A to G sharp, guys, back to A. Now another whole, and then half. So we got whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Okay? So, which notes do we get when we do that formula? When we put that formula in there, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, it's very simple to just kind of say that, oh yeah, C scale has no sharps, no flats, no nothing. Now, from our C string, I'm gonna show it to you so you can get a visual of what it looks like when applied to our ukulele. You have C, then whole. Remember, we're gonna skip one. Whole, half, whole, 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 half. One more time. C, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So if an easy way to remember it is to break it in two parts: whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That's why when we were doing the chant earlier, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. That gives us our very basic do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So that is our C scale, and that gives us the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now you're probably saying, Aldrine, like, I don't want to be soloing just on that one string. Of course, we can utilize the other strings that we have in our ukulele. So when we reach this 4th fret right here, so for whole, whole, that's actually the same note as our open E string. Same note. So if you do whole, whole, half, whole, whole, and right there again, this note right here is our open A. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So we have So now I'm gonna ask Aaron Nakamura once again to play those same notes, C, F, and G for me here. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and C and F and G. Back to C. So here we go. I'm gonna play the scale. And I can play that in any combination that I want, or any sequence that I want. It doesn't even have to go from low to high or high to low. I can skip some if I want to. There we go. I'm just gonna play notes from the scale. Now notice when I don't follow that formula. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. So it just doesn't work, it just, even I tried so hard to kind of just make it fit in there. It's like fit. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole. It's just not going to fit. So for us to be able to be confident in playing the correct notes, so that when we play to our audience, they're gonna say, "Man, that sounded really good. All those notes sounded like they belonged in that song, and not one of those notes didn't sound like they didn't belong." So great job. So that's what we want to do. We want to be able to play good notes, or good sounding notes. We don't want to play the sour notes. You know, we don't want the audience to think that we don't know what we're doing. So we want to be able to be confident, and in order to do that, we have to learn our scales. So that's how we got our C scale. Now let's try that out with our G scale. So I'm going to put my ukulele down for a second once again, and let's try to figure out our G scale. Let's erase this really quick. Look at this. It's like a pencil, because the other side of it is an eraser. I remember the old number 2 pencils had that. You can write and erase.
What is
So,
what is number 2?
Number 2. Where's the number 1 pencil? So G. So G, whole, same formula. So we're gonna skip that G sharp A flat, then whole again, and half. Whole, 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 half. Okay? Now, let's take a look at the notes that we got. We have G, so starting from the note that we, of the scale that we wanted to get. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So we skipped F and got to F sharp. So the only difference between the C scale and the G scale, or a C major scale and G major scale, is that C major scale has an F note and a G major scale has an F sharp note. And why? Because when we put the formula in, that's what it gave us. And that's why. Okay? Now let's take a look at our ukulele fretboard. So G, E string 3rd fret will be our G note. And if we do our formula, whole, whole, half, so whole. And this kind of tells me that I can play that on my A string, and that's fine. Or else I'm just going to go all the way up here. So G, whole. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Alright, now here's the F, and here's the F sharp, and you can kind of hear it. If I play the regular F, it's not going to sound like our G scale. So Aaron's going to play for me G, C, and D, which are all associated with our G scale. So G, 1, 2, ready, go. So G, and C, and D. Back to G. There we go. What if we played one that's not in there? It just doesn't sound
None of
good,
those
like
notes.
at all. None of those notes were in that scale, and it's not gonna sound good. So those are the notes we're going to avoid. So if we're gonna keep in mind that these are the correct notes, so we're going to stay away from the bad notes as much as possible. All right. So once again, let's try it one more time, Aaron. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, G. And the thing is, just like how this note is a D note, this is also a D note. That means I can go here as well. And then I can use this E instead of this E, and I can use this F sharp. So I don't necessarily have to keep moving up those scales. I can go down or as high as long as I'm playing the right scale, which is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So all the G's, all the A's all the B's, all the C's, D's, E's, and F sharps are going to be correct. So this D is going to be correct. This E is going to be correct. This F sharp is going to be correct. So now, listen. 1, 2, ready, go. Now remember that technique that we showed you on Uke Minutes, which is a pull-off technique, so a G string pull-off technique. We're gonna play the note on the A string with our pointer finger, and thumb is going to play the G with our thumb. So Aaron's gonna play G, C, D, and because the G is going to be correct, I'm gonna play any notes, and I'm gonna play that G on top of it. So here we go. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Now, also, I know that A is part of our G scale. So if we were to take a look at want to show this this part of the board here. So if we were to take a look at our G scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G, I'll know that my A string is also part of this scale. My E string is also part of this scale. So is my C, and so is my G, right? I could technically play the notes, and I could pull off on that, revealing the open string, which would still be correct. Now Aaron's gonna play it for me, and I'm gonna show you what that does. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Now that sounds extremely fancy, but I just explained to you why that works, and it's because of scales. And now you guys will realize, wow, I need to learn me some scales, because scales will allow you to do things like that. You can do pull-offs. This G string pull-offs, with the very funny name but very awesome sounding technique, is going to be possible with scales, because if you break it down, you're playing all the notes that are correct. Now let's rewind back to what we did last week when we have stuff like what you're doing basically is just picking notes off of that scale. We have our F scale, so if this is F, whole, half, whole, half. That means this note is okay. This note is okay. When we're doing our arpeggios, our extended arpeggios are basically us just picking notes off of the scale. Because all those notes are part of our F scale. And you're gonna notice that whenever you hear your favorite artist play, they're going to be doing solos, or they're going to be doing riffs that are pretty much going to follow the major or minor scales. Now that we know what they are, we know how to get them. What I want to do, so this is going to be a little unorthodox, and this is how I did it when I was, when I was starting out. What does this scale sound like to you? When I play those sequence of notes, what do they sound like? Do they sound happy? Do they sound sad? Do they sound complete? Do they sound empty? Now, I say this because, as I mentioned earlier, I learned how to play the ukulele by ear. And, I would just figure out songs, and, when I noticed that some notes kind of just repeat, whenever I'm playing in F, I would play those notes. Whenever I'm playing in G, I'll play those notes in G. Now, I also noticed that these notes had kind of an emotional characteristics to it. So if you add an attachment of an emotion, or if you attach an emotion towards that scale is going to be a lot easier to identify what kind of scale that is. You know, if that scale sounds happy, then I'm going to associate happy sounding scales with a major scale. So if if someone's playing, it's like, oh, those notes sound kind of happy. He must be playing a major scale. Or those notes sound, very Middle Eastern. He must be playing a Middle Eastern scale. Or it sounds, like nice little, nice little gaps in those notes. So each one is going to have its own different characteristics. So when you do this early on, when you hear certain things or certain chords, just like how we did that with our chords, what does it sound like to you? It sounds happy, sounds like a skip to the park or whatever, and then this sounds kind of sad, like it doesn't sound complete, like it sounds incomplete. So we want to be able to have those same kind of emotional or attach emotions to each one of those scales, just like how we would with our chords, so that we can identify them, because as soon as we hear it, our ears will determine what kind of scales that will sound like. All right, so I wrote it down. C scale are these notes, G scale are these notes. All right, so are there any questions on the G, C, or major scales in general?
The idea is that you take the formula too, right? And you can plug it in with any
with
note.
any note. So it's not just, yeah, very good. It's not just C, it's not just G, just like how I did earlier with the F. So I figure out my F scale. I can figure out my A scale. So A string, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now I know this sounds kind of, hard, and it sounds like, oh man, it sounds kind of complicated. I don't want to really do like all this thinking and all this theory. But once you start doing it, and once you start practicing, how to play those notes, you don't have to write it down like this, where like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to write all the notes down and do whole step, half step. So this is just for those people who are visual learners. But if if you want to just play and apply these music theory to your ukulele, or this music theory to your ukulele, you can just visualize the whole, half, whole, half. And that's how I've been kind of figuring out scales extremely fast. So if I were to say A, I'm gonna start in A. Let's go whole, half, whole, half, because I'm gonna go skip that one note, skip, no skip, 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 no skip. And because I know my fretboard really well, just like how I told you folks before, a great companion to Ukulele 102 is to learn your entire fretboard. So check out the Mastering Your Fretboard course here on Ukulele on the Ground Plus. It allows me to kind of identify those notes and see where those notes appear on the other frets, on the other strings. So for example, we have that A scale, A major scale on that A string, but we can also do it here. Sorry about that. See, I'm not playing the right note. I'm trying to play that half tone in there. It's not working. So there as well. So it's very advantageous for you to master your fretboard and knowing which notes are which and where they also appear on the other strings.
Yeah, I think, so Devin asked, is it easier
Yes.
to just memorize patterns on the fretboard rather than thinking about the individual notes?
Yes, it is. So that's a music teacher is probably not going to be telling you that, because they want you to kind of understand the theory. But the shortcut is, and I tell people this all the time, that the Beatles didn't really know music theory, and that didn't stop them from becoming great musicians. But how the Beatles did it is they just saw it as as patterns. So that's why I taught it to you folks as a formula or a pattern, and how to get that scale. So you can get that scale just using that pattern. We don't really need to, to write it out. Just kind of visualize the pattern in your, on your fretboard. So that whole, half, whole, half pattern. So, I know that that's the scale. Do I need to know that it's going to be A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A? Not really, unless, like I want to start writing down that scale. writing out what it looks like on paper. But if I'm just kind of learning by ear, just like I mentioned time and time again, when I learned, I didn't do it with books or with private instruction and whatnot. I just kind of I learned it through patterns. So I would learn these patterns on my ukulele, and I noticed that these patterns just appear pretty much everywhere, and they repeatedly appear, and I would always see them, and I noticed a pattern and use those patterns to my advantage. Okay, so the more you figure out these scales, or the more you practice these scales, you're going to be seeing them more as patterns rather than, oh, it's A, B, C, D, E, E, F, G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, or or any one of those. So you don't have to necessarily memorize the notes themselves more than the pattern that it looks on your ukulele.
Because when you're playing, it's not like
Yeah.
you're gonna be thinking like, here comes a G sharp,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
here comes like, if you're just playing with somebody else,
Yeah.
you'll just be thinking like, oh, I know I can play these notes.
Right, it definitely helps. It helps, but do you need to do it? No, you don't need to learn how what those notes are exactly, or what makes up a D sharp scale, for example. So if someone asks me, oh, can you play a D sharp scale? It's like, yeah, here, because they're that pattern. But if you were to ask me what those notes are, it's gonna take me a little while. I'm not gonna know it like right off the top of my head. It's gonna take me a bit. So it's like, okay, D sharp, then we got this E sharp perhaps, and then the rest of the notes. We don't have another 5 minutes to spend me just trying to figure out what a D sharp scale is. All right, so any other questions on major scales?
Yeah, a couple people are asking about. So Masonic asks, if the chords are in the key of C,
Yes.
do you just want to play C scale notes?
Yes.
And I think, well, that depends too, right? Like, what is it, C major, or if it's
Yes,
C minor?
very, very, very
So-
good. So there is a difference between C major and C minor scale, and you'll learn that in the next slide. But for now, if you're playing, if it sounds happy, same thing. If it sounds happy, is going to be that major scale. So C minor sounds a lot sadder. So because you wanna attach an emotion to it, when you hear it, you're gonna be like, okay, well, I'm not going to be playing a major scale there. I'm gonna be playing a minor scale. So I want you guys to kind of associate your, those emotions with those kinds of sounds.
Okay, wait. Before we get into that stuff, people are asking about when you're changing chords, are you changing your scale? Because when we played C, F, and G,
Very good question.
and then we also have to make sure that even when you're playing minor,
Yeah, even when you're playing, even when you're playing minor scales.
no,
or
minor chords.
or minor
within
chords.
the
Yeah,
major.
yes.
That's why. So let's tackle that before we even move to minor scales.
Okay. So you still stick to the same scale. The scale is based on the key. So there are different chords that sound good to a certain key, and we'll learn about those, I believe, in the next week of Ukulele 102. We're going to be tackling some chord family, what sounds good in what key. So when we tackle that, we'll explain to you folks which chords sound good together. But for example, C, F, G could also have A minor that sounds good in there. C, A minor, F, and G. But I want you folks for now start to kind of think about what notes that you normally see, because I know you folks have chords that you would normally see together, because I know you folks have have played a bunch of songs before. So for example, if I'm gonna play Drop Baby Drop, like how we do on Aloha Friday Live Jams, we'd play A, C sharp minor 7, B minor 7, E7. So even though we have minor chords in there, we are in the key of A. So I'm going to be playing the A major scale. So you want to play that for me, Aaron? So we have
So you're only playing notes from the A major
scale. Yes.
Throughout the whole thing.
Throughout the whole thing.
Even when you're changing to minor chords.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because the chords themselves.
The chords
are,
change, but
yeah.
the key does not
The
change.
key doesn't
so
change.
we're we're focusing on the key of the song, which would then be A. So
think-
in order to figure out what key that song is, you want to be able to listen to the chords and listen to what chord sounds like home. So that's the best way I can kind of explain it without getting into the music theory, on what makes keys. And we will get to that in either next week or the following week. But I want you guys to kind of listen to the chords. So for example, when we play Drop Baby Drop, A, C sharp minor. So this, when we stop there, it doesn't really sound like that's where home is. Or when we stop here, it doesn't sound like that's what home is. Or that, but once we reach A, that sounds like home.
You could
It's
end the song.
Yeah, you could
on
end
that.
the song right there. So if we did, if we ended there, it sounds incomplete. So just like how we put complete question mark or empty, we want to be able to assign those kinds of emotions, and that's why I thought it was so important to think about what those things sound like to you, because later on you're going to be using your ears to associate those chords with or with those keys with that scale. All right. So once we reach to the A, it sounds like home. A major to be exact. It sounds like we landed in A minor. So because we landed on A major, I will I'll try my best to play the A major scale. Very, very good question. Very good question. Okay, anything else before we move on to our minor scales?
So yeah, Leanne says that I think she understands the idea, but she doesn't quite understand how you effectively like translate the pattern, like to different strings or to different because if it's going to different strings, the positioning is a little bit different, right? So
yes. Well, the pattern still stays the same. Like I said, it's really advantageous to go through the mastering your fretboard. Because I've mastered my fretboard, I don't have to necessarily play the G scale like this, because it's ineffective. I have other strings that I can go to. I don't have to keep moving down the fretboard just using that one string. And I find that as a disadvantage, because when you're doing that, you want to use your fingers in sequence, so pointer, middle, ring, pinky, and eventually you're just going to be playing the whole thing with just your pinky. So in order to not do that, I'm going to be using my my other strings.
But like it's I think with like what Leanne might be getting confused with is like, no matter what string you're playing, like you're always playing the same notes.
Yes.
If you're trying to hit that same scale, you're just playing the same.
You're still
notes.
playing those same notes. As long as you're playing any of the notes that are in the scale, you are going to be playing the correct notes. Remember, I said scales are as important as wanting to play the right notes. So as long as you play within the scale, you will be playing the correct notes.
And then the scales themselves repeat, right?
Yes.
So like, you might be playing a C, and then it's like, oh, it sounds different from this other C I played farther down than that or something.
Yeah.
But it's the same. It's C. It's the note C. But it's just two different octaves.
Yeah. So just like how we did last week with the extended arpeggios, we have F A C. F A C. And then they'll just go back to another F, A, C, F, A, C, and it repeats over and over again with our extended arpeggios. Same thing with your scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And that's exactly why I wrote it over here with the C. Sorry. With the C in mind, because what this indicates is that this is the same note as this, which then repeats the same formula all over again.
So yeah, like, could you show them like going from C to C, and then you can even.
So we
extend
have
it.
this C right here. Then we also have this C right here. So we have. So that's 2 octaves of scales. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half.
So you land on C, and then you just start the pattern.
Yeah,
over
start the
again.
pattern over.
So, it seems kind of confusing. Like if you try to take all this
Yeah.
in. So like it's just like take the pattern, and then try and like look at your notes and look at your strings and try to apply them there.
Yeah.
And then you'll probably start to understand, start to see like where it fits and how it is a pattern really,
Yeah.
like how it repeats itself and how you can keep seeing it again and again.
Yes. Okay. So next up, we have minor scales. I love that there's a lot of questions, so it's okay if we go over time because, you know, we want to be able to get this down, all right? So minor scales, which is basically, you know, we're going to be going over the same exact things, but with the minor scale. Now you have a brand new formula. You have whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So I'm going to break it down into 2 parts again. Whole, half, whole, then another whole, half, whole, whole. So whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Say it with me here. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Okay? Now let's take a look at our C minor scale. I'm going to erase this. Reminds me of number 2 pencils in the past. All right, so from our C notes, whole, and then half, and then whole, and then another whole, and then whole, half, whole. So that gives us the notes: C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, C. Oh, sorry. Oh, right here. That's the glare. Okay, there it is. C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, then C. I wrote it down right here conveniently for you folks. C, D, E flat. Oh, right here, this one. C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Okay. So here we go. The notes C minor scale. So C, whole, half, then whole, right, is right here. So whole, half, whole, whole. So whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Sorry, I think I messed up on the writing, but at least you guys can see it, you know, on the ukulele. So whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So I'll do it on the C string so you guys can see it. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So once again, whole, half, whole, oh, sorry. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. From the C, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So if we were to go here, that note right there is this note right here. So whole, half, whole, which is right here, then whole. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Now, does that sound happy, sad, complete, empty to you folks? It definitely sounds a lot sadder than our major scale. So our minor scale, okay, so I'm gonna ask Aaron to play for me C minor and F minor. So let's just nail it down to just 2 basic. minor chords. So C minor, 2, 3, then F minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then at this point, you can just add some of your techniques already. You can slide, you can do pull-offs and hammer-ons. Now let's see if if it sounds good if I play something that's not in that scale. So try it out again. 1, 2, ready, go. None of those notes work. But as soon as I hit one that is, okay, next up, let's try to figure out a G minor scale, and hopefully I do it correct this time on the board. Okay, so same kind of formula. We have G, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Okay, so that gives us G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, then back to G. Now, some of you folks might be saying, why would it be B flat? Why would it not be A sharp? So the answer to that is this. So when you do G, the whole step will take you to an A. Okay, so when you do a half step, you cannot have the same letter twice in the same scale. Okay, so in order to not have the same letter twice, instead of A, it then becomes B flat. Because we do not have a B, we're going to be skipping over that and playing a C. So it goes G, A, B flat, C, D, same thing here, E flat, F, and G. Okay, so here are the notes for that scale: G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G. And if we took away all those flats, what would we have? We have G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So what I like to do as a shortcut is I like to just write out the alphabet. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then write out the flats after I write the formula out. So I write the formula out, and then I decide where the flats are by the alphabet.
Or the flats or sharps.
Yeah, flats or sharps, based on the alphabet or where I am in the alphabet.
Could you write out the G? Like, could you actually write out G, like starting from G, to show like how you would.
So I would do it like this: G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Everyone knows their alphabets. So I'm gonna do it like this. There you go: G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So what that does, that means I have a B flats, and I have an E flat. Oh, sorry, yeah, E flats.
And that's for any scale, right?
Yeah, that's for any scale.
If you guys are having like a hard time like starting off from another letter, right? Because like it's written out A sharp, and then you can just write out what you want the scale to be. So if you want it to be D, you just write out D to D again. So
that's why we have those two different kinds. So that flat and the sharp, because sometimes it will be the sharp and sometimes it will be the flat. So just like with let's take a look back at our G major scale. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So this F sharp is not a G flat because we already have G on our scale.
Yeah.
So we cannot have two of the same letters in the same scale for major and minor scales. So
But that's just for writing purposes, right?
yeah. Oh, I went all the way back. Oh no. Okay, there, sorry. So now let's take a look at our G minor scale. G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G. This is our G, E string 3rd fret, then whole, which is this. So whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. One more time. Whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. If I wanted to use the different strings, we can use this C string 7th fret. I know it sounds it's a little bit high, but why I chose that, it's because it's closer to my end goal, which would be A string 10th fret. So sometimes I like to practice it this way, because all the notes are within my reach. Okay, instead of going here, then I have to kind of change the position of my hands. Notice how my hand goes from here, my wrist will eventually end up here. See how much different it is? But if I start here, my wrists stay the same. So that's why it's very important to learn all the notes on your ukulele so you can play notes like this. So here it is, C string 7th fret, then whole is the same thing as this. So whole, half, whole, whole, once again, this is right here. So whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Alright, so Aaron Nakamura is going to play for me G minor and C minor, which are the same chords in our G minor key. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. And while we're playing this, I want you guys to think about what it sounds like to you. Does it sound sad? Sound complete? Incomplete? Empty? Here we go. Let's start up here. It already sounds like a song. All I'm doing is I'm just playing the notes in the G minor scale. So if you want to get fancy with it, and whenever you see, you know, professional ukulele players, they're like just going crazy on their ukuleles, like it's basically just that scale, just being played fast and choosing different kinds of notes in, you know, to play on it. So when you break it down, what they're doing is simple. It's quite simple, really. It's those notes that they're playing is simple, but the way that they're playing it is fast, but you can still break it down. You're like, if I could play faster, I could play that. So it's not like something impossible or something that's like, oh, I don't know how he got those notes, or I don't know, you know, how he knows where to go. It's just the knowledge of scales will give you the path or give you the map to follow on your fretboard and which notes are going to be correct and which notes are not going to be correct. Which notes you can and cannot go to. All right, so same thing. I want you guys to tell me what this scale sounds like to you. Does it sound happy, sad, complete, or empty? So that next time you hear, you know, G, but you know, in a minor key, you're like that. Yeah, I'm not gonna be playing a G major scale because this is what happens. So Aaron, can you play that for me? And I'm gonna play a G major scale on top of a minor key. Here we go. although it sounds,
It doesn't sound good.
it sounds good by itself, it's not gonna sound good with the G minor key because, he's playing in a very sad sounding kind of chords while I'm playing a very tiptoe through the tulips kind of sounding scale. So they're not gonna sound good together. So what you want to play the appropriate scale for the appropriate key.
Yeah, I think some people are getting confused between keys, chords, and scales.
Mhm.
And like the idea behind it is that keys is like the broad term. It's like
Yes.
the broadest.
Yeah.
So you can say like, oh, there's these chords and this scale in this key. But like people are thinking like, oh, if it's a C major scale, then it must be like, or like they're you like if you hear C major, the key of C major, then the C major scale will work for that.
Yeah.
But then anything else, it's not. Even if it says C, it's not gonna work for it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So that's where you wanna be sure of the two differences, and usually it'll be just major and minor.
Okay, so now that you guys know the difference between a major scale and the minor scale and how to create them and how to use them, I want you guys to take some of the chord progressions that we've already given to you folks. So back in Ukulele 101, we gave you guys a bunch of chord progressions. So play those chord progressions, and I want you folks to figure out the scale for each key. So for example, we gave you A, C sharp minor, B minor, E7. Okay, that's obviously, so I want you guys to hear which chord sounds like home, and that's going to be your key, and then figure out the scale for that, and then play those scales to those chords. Now, if you guessed wrong on which chord sounds like home, then I want you to pick another chord that it might be, because all the notes should fit, right? And if it doesn't fit, that means that's not the right key. So it's all about trial and error. Try another scale, and it might be for that scale. So for me, when I was trying to figure out songs by ear, when I'm like, okay, it might be in this key, I'd get it wrong sometimes. I'm not gonna get it right on the first try every single time. So it's gonna take me a little bit. So there might be some notes that don't work, and that's when I kind of choose another chord. But basically, the chords are gonna tell you what key it's going to be in.
And you just wanna like if they're like listening to a song and they're trying to figure out what scale to use for it, like they can just keep playing the scale over and over the
Yes.
song, right? And
Yeah.
hear like, does this note fit? Oh, okay, this note
Yeah.
fits.
Yeah.
Does this note fit? Oh, okay, this note fits.
Yeah.
And that's
So-
kind of how you narrow it
Yeah,
down.
that's how you narrow it down to what key. I mean, later on, like I said, we're going to be showing you, which, how to figure out what key you're in. But this is very important to learn first. So I want you guys to learn. It's kind of like a chicken and egg thing, because to figure out what key you're in, you first need to learn your scales. And in order to do the scale to what key, you gotta learn what keys are. So it's a chicken and egg. So I figured this would be the best way to approach it, is to figure out how to create major and minor scales, and then we'll figure out the keys from there.
I think too, it helps with like your ear training. You can
Yes.
hear like,
Yeah.
oh, I am playing the right notes. Or,
Yeah, and
"Oh,
like I said, in the beginning, I wanted to kind of show it to you folks, just like how I learned it when I was starting out. It's just finding different patterns. So I want to show you folks the patterns of major and minor scales and applying those patterns to your ukulele. All right. So let's take a look at week 3 homework. So I have 4 exercises for you folks for this week, and basically what they are, well, you can always go to UU Plus and download them. It's a little bit long, so we couldn't fit it all in one page. So you can go to UU Plus and download these exercises. So the first exercise is basically your C major scale. So I kept it to the 2 scales that we learned, C and G. So C major scale. But then this time you're gonna do pull-offs. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a pull-off. So 3, then going back to B, so C, B, A, B, A, G, A, B, F. Oh, sorry. A, G, F. I'm thinking backwards. And then G, F, E, F, E, D, E, D, C. So it's like going three notes down, go up 2, then 3 notes down. And this will help you kind of get to know that scale. Okay, and if you go over to UU Plus, we do have videos that you guys can play with, and to kind of test yourself, to play along with the video. But we have tabs and music notations of the exercises that I'm playing. So same thing with your G major scale, but this time I'm starting off with the C string 7th fret. And then C minor scale, same exact exercise. So it goes up. And then this G minor scale. Okay, so those are your new scale exercises. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be upping the ante, and I want you guys to play those with as little mistake as possible, as least amount of mistakes as possible. All right, so those are your exercises. Head on down to UU Plus to print out the tabs and watch the example videos and try to play along. Okay. So any questions on week number 3?
I think earlier Leanne, I wanted to wait till the very end to kind of talk about this. Leanne mentioned that she guessed that she can understand it mentally, but then physically when it comes to playing it, she's slow. So she's thinking about just building up her muscle memory.
Yes, and that's why we have these exercises for you folks. So these exercises will help you get that muscle memory playing those scales.
Yeah, and I think these exercises are better than just if you play the scales up and
going
down.
up and down. Yeah,
because one of the troubles with doing it that way, it's great to learn your scale, but then the trouble with that is when you start to solo or when you start to do stuff, it sounds like you're just playing the scale up and down.
Yeah.
You get into that kind of trap. So you might want to try exercises like this where it's playing the notes in a more musical way, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt to create your own, kind of exercises. You don't necessarily have to do it exactly like that. You can do it like this, perhaps. Just doing exercise. You're still playing those notes, but playing them in a in a different way. Or you could do. Still same notes. It sounds extremely fancy. When I play it that fast, it sounds really fancy. But you all now know, after watching this lesson, that all those notes are basically just the C major scale notes, and I'm just kind of playing it, in different, in different sequences.
The basic idea for these exercises too is that you're playing the scale up, right? And then you're doing pull-offs going down where you can.
Yes.
So but they can take this exercise, kind of the pattern of the exercise, and they can apply it to other scales or whatever else they're trying to learn too, right? So instead of doing it you did C major, C minor, G major, G minor, but they could be practicing with
F or E or D or whichever scales that you guys want. But now that you guys know the formula, you can figure out any scale or any major and minor scales that are available to us in Western music. Okay? So, next, I don't have my schedule right in front of me. Kahai, do you know what's coming up for next week, buddy?
No, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so next week, I believe we're learning chord families. So chord families will basically tell us the key. Just like I mentioned earlier, it will tell us, what key we're in, what sounds, what chords sound good together. So if you've always wanted to know why, C, F, and G will sound good together, or G, C, D sounds good together, or C, A minor, F, D minor, E minor, G, C sounds good, then tune in for next week where we cover our chord families.
Is it chord families?
Yes.
Or because
It's gonna have to be now. So next week, chord families for Ukulele Underground University, Ukulele 102, week number 4. This is Aldrin Guerrero, and I'll see you folks next time. Have a great one. Aloha.